The Sky Bet Championship is back, and Middlesbrough fans can't wait to see whether we're able to mount a genuine push for promotion this season. Last season didn't exactly go to plan. Middlesbrough finished 10th in the table under Michael Carrick. It was seen as a real failure and something that which a lot of fans are very, very keen to see the club improve on this term. Rob Edwards is in charge. So far, it's been quite a quiet summer in the transfer market, but hopefully with a few new signings, Middlesbrough will be able to push themselves back up the table and at least push for a top six finish. There's going to be a lot of competition for places in the division this season. It's going to be more competitive than ever. So are Middlesbrough capable of mounting a promotion push? I've taken a look at the championship table, given my predictions and declared whether I think Middlesbrough are genuine contenders to go up this term. Let's go. So welcome to my championship predictions. You'll be able to see here that I have already filled in the bottom half of the table. I'm not going to go through everyone from 1 to 24 because I simply don't have the time. So this is my prediction for the bottom half of the championship table. You can see here the bottom three that I've chosen in the championship this season are Sheffield Wednesday. They're obviously going through a huge amount of trouble off the field with finances, their ownership. Players haven't been paid. Players are leaving the club. They're almost certain to finish rock bottom. Hull City, their ownership isn't much better. To be completely honest, they're a side who are clearly looking on a downward spiral. And Oxford United, I could see them really struggling this season as well. They did well last season. They probably performed above expectations, but I can see them battling relegation. Bottom half of the table, a few of the usual suspects that you'd expect in there. Charlton, I think they'll do relatively well. I think they'll avoid the drop. Under Nathan Jones. Watford will be down there, QPR, Stoke City, Blackburn, although they were very much in and around the other playoff places last season. I think they are very much a club in decline. I think this season under Valerian Ismail, I think it's going to be tricky for them. So I certainly don't see them challenging for promotion and a place in the playoff places. And I think they will ultimately settle in the bottom half. Portsmouth, they did well last season. They are a really decent championship side. They could potentially be higher up in the table than what I'm suggesting here. They could be a little bit of a dark horse going into this championship campaign, but I put them in the bottom half as well. Derby County, again, another side who could potentially be dark horses. I've got John Eustace in charge this season. They've made a couple of really good signings. And Derby, I think under John Eustace, could be a side who might surprise a few people. I still think they might be in the bottom half, but don't be surprised if they do push towards the top half and potentially into that contention to be in the other playoff mix. Preston, Swansea City as well, I've put in the bottom half. So there's 12 teams already in place, nice and quick. I'm really here to focus on the top half of the table because ultimately, Bonkers for Boro, it's a Middlesbrough fan channel. All the fans want to know whether Middlesbrough are going to be challenging for promotion this season, whether Middlesbrough are going to be capable of pushing for the top six. Last season was really, really disappointing. We sort of snatched defeat from the jaws of victory. It was there on a plate for us so many times. Even at the very end of the season, the fact that we were just one game away from getting into the other top six. Had we been able to get that victory against Coventry City, it really was there for us. And for Middlesbrough fans, it was a really, really disappointing end to the campaign that we weren't able to do it. We were by no means magnificent in those final few games. I don't think any of the chasing pack for the top six were that good. And I think for Middlesbrough, it was a really, really disappointing end to the season that we still weren't able to get even just a couple of points that were needed to get into the top six. Because last season, I think it was quite a poor championship. If I'm being completely honest, it wasn't very competitive as far as I'm concerned. There was the clear favourites and the clear strongest sides in the division who sort of ran away with it. Sunderland, they were fourth from bloody October or something like that, so they were just completely unopposed there. So the top four was almost wrapped up. Well, I'm being a little bit facetious, but certainly by about February, I'd say it looked very, very likely that the top four was set in stone. Everyone else was kind of battling for those last two places in the playoffs, and no one was really that impressive, to be honest. There was no one who sort of stood out as a genuine contender to go up. There was a couple of sides who hit good runs of form. I know that Coventry City did well under Frank Lampard, so they were ultimately deserving of their place in the top six, but it wasn't very competitive. Middlesbrough really missed out on the opportunity to get in there, and this season I think is going to be very, very different because you can see here from the clubs that are listed along the bottom. the sides that I'm yet to assign to a position in the Championship, that there's going to be some big clubs who are challenging in the top half of the table. So we'll go through them. We'll go through them and decide where they're going to be. I haven't done this before. I haven't really rehearsed it, so bear with me if it doesn't quite go to plan. I'm going to go from the top down because, being completely frank, I don't think many people believe that Middlesbrough are going to be challenging for automatic promotion. And a little spoiler, I certainly don't have them in the top two in my predicted team. So I think I'm going to start off. I'm going to put Ipswich Town in the automatic promotion places. I think they're going to be in really good shape coming into this season. I know that they've lost Liam Delap, but they have been able to keep the core of the squad together. They've still got Kieran McKenna in charge. They've lost a couple of big leaders in the middle of the park, a couple of ex-Middlesbrough players in Sam Morsey and Massimo Luongo, who've left the club. But generally speaking, they've been able to keep the squad together. A lot of their recruitment last summer, it was players who sort of fall in that kind of in between category between the Championship and the Premier League, players who maybe aren't quite there at Premier League level, but are certainly in the upper echelons of the Championship. So they've built a squad which is really capable of challenging for automatic promotion. I think they'll be right up there. They're a well-run club. I think they'll be certainly up there. I think they might need a couple of new signings. I think they'll need a new striker. There has been a little bit of speculation that they were interested in Chuba Akpom, but certainly they'll need a striker to come in and replace Liam Delap. But I certainly believe that Ipswich will be challenging for automatic promotion. They may well be the champions this season, so they're in the top two. The other side, who I think will be in the automatic promotion places come the end of the season, are Southampton. Again, they're a club who they're just a sort of a perennial yo-yo club, aren't they, really? They're a side who just aren't good enough for the Premier League. They go up and they play a really entertaining brand of football. It seems to work relatively well in the Championship, but ultimately when they get up to the Premier League, it's just far too easy to play against. Ultimately, last season, they got relegated. Russell Martin got sacked. And ultimately, at the end of the season, it was Will Still who got the job. He's a really talented coach. He's an up-and-coming coach. He's not going to be... He's not really like Russell Martin in that he's not going to be it's not going to be about getting on the ball for possession's sake. He's very much big on transitions and off the ball movements. So I think Southampton will be a different outfit this season. I think they'll be much tougher to play against, and I think with everything considered, I think they've got a really good strong squad at the time of recording at the start of August. So I think they'll be in good shape going into the Championship season. They may well lose a few more players. Kyle Walker-Peters has already left to join West Ham, and they might lose a couple more. But I think generally speaking, I think they'll be in good shape. There shouldn't be too much turmoil with them, I don't think, between now and the end of the summer transfer window. So I think that those two certainly will be in contention for the automatic promotion places. So continuing to work our way down in the playoff places, looking at the teams that we've got there, I think that Leicester City, I think they'll be in the playoff places. Of course, they're in a tricky position at the moment. Financially, there's a lot of uncertainty about Leicester City and what they're going to be capable of doing this season. I've inadvertently put Middlesbrough into the playoff places. We're not there yet, but Leicester City will certainly be in the playoff places. I think they've got quite a strong squad. There's a lot of scrutiny about them financially. Talk of a points deduction that they might be picking up this season. And ultimately that is a little bit concerning for supporters. But I think when you do look at the squad of players that they do have there is still a lot of quality within that group. I think if they don't get a points deduction, I certainly think they'll be up there rivaling Ipswich and Southampton. So if you're looking at it purely on a points per game basis, I do think that Leicester will be right up there this season. But should they get a points deduction, it might just see them drop down a little bit further. I can't really see them going further down than the top six, really. I think they'll still be right up there. So I think whether it's convincing and whether they finish third, I'm not too sure, or whether they'll just end up squeezing in there. But I do think that Leicester City will be in the playoff places come the end of the season. Another side that I think will be in the other playoff places is Coventry City. They did really well last season under Frank Lampard. They've just got a really good Championship level squad. They've been slowly building year on year. A lot of that good work was done by Mark Robbins and the squad that he built, but they made some really shrewd signings last season. If they can keep hold of the bulk of the squad that Frank Lampard's got there, I think they'll be in really good shape. I know that it was a bit of a a dream first season for Frank Lampard, who took them on when they were down near the bottom of the table, and they ended up pushing on to get into the playoff places. It was quite similar, really, to when Michael Carrick took charge of Middlesbrough. So it'll be very, very interesting to see whether Lampard can get a similar tune out of those Coventry players this season and get them into the top six. I think that they're capable of doing so because they've got some really good, experienced players at championship level in that team, and some really talented young players as well. People like Jack Rodoni as well, who has been linked with a move to the Premier League. But I don't think anything's happened just yet. It does seem like he could potentially be staying at Coventry as well. So that'll be an interesting one. But I think that Coventry will be in there in the playoff places. Another team that I think will be in the playoff places, which might be a surprise to some, perhaps not to others, is Birmingham City. They've done some really big business in the transfer market this season. This summer, I should say. They've just been promoted from League One, so it would be a massive achievement if they were to get into the playoffs. But the business that they've done, they've signed Furuhashi, who was previously of Celtic. He cost £10 million. There's a few other really, really big stars who are going in there, and they've made some good signings. Brighter Sai Samuel, who was with Fenerbahce, who was previously of QPR. There's a few others as well. And I think they're just going to go from strength to strength, really. I think between now and the end of the summer transfer window, there's going to be even more good deals that are done there. I think they'll be certainly in and around that top six. I think a couple of skeptics are suggesting that they might struggle to reach that high in the table. Perhaps the leap from coming up from League One to the Championship might be too big for them. But I think we've seen in the last couple of years with Ipswich in particular that gap between League One and the Championship isn't actually all that big. So if you do have the resource there to be able to do it, you can really make a good fist of life in the Championship, and that's what I think Birmingham City will be able to do. Looking at the top half of the table section, first of all, I'm going to drop Bristol City in there. They got into the playoffs the season just gone, but they've ultimately lost their manager. They lost Liam Manning, who went to Norwich City, who we'll come on to in just a little bit. I think with Gerhard Struber in charge of Bristol City, I just don't think that they're going to be quite as convincing this season. I think they were really effective last season. They weren't spectacular by any means, but they were really effective, and that's what managed to get them into the top six in that woeful race for the playoffs, which we were talking about earlier, when no one really wanted it. Bristol City did a good job. They got into the top six. I don't think it will be the same this time around, and so I've got them in the top half of the table. West Brom, I think, will be in there as well. They've got Ryan Mason in charge. West Brom are always there or thereabouts, I find. Ryan Mason is a really good young coach, very, very highly rated at Tottenham, and it's going to be interesting to see how he gets on, but he's got a good squad of players there. I think West Brom will be in and around that mix to get into the top six, but I think ultimately they might just fall short. Wrexham are going to go into this category as well. I know a lot of people have been getting carried away with the Wrexham story and the wealth that they've got and this journey that they've got, because ultimately they have been promoted from the National League, from League Two, from League One, which is absolutely outstanding. It has been a huge success, and it's a story that I'm really invested in as well. It's like, I'm a big fan of It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, and Ryan Reynolds is all right too, if not a bit irritating. But I think Wrexham, I think it will be interesting to see how they got on this season. They've made some big moves in the transfer market already. Obviously they've signed Josh Windass, they've signed Lewis O'Brien, who was previously with Middlesbrough, they've signed Connor Cody as well. So there's some really good, solid Championship level players going in there. I think there'll be some more signings that will be made as well. Between now and the end of between now and the end of the transfer window. But I think, as far as I'm concerned, I think they might just fall short in that hope of getting to the top six. But don't get me wrong, I think even finishing in the top half in the Championship would be a really, really good result for Wrexham. I think that if they can do just that, get into the top half, kind of consolidate for a season, then they'll be able to kick on. And I certainly expect them to be challenging for promotion in the seasons to come, but maybe just not this term. Who else have we got here? So we've got Norwich City, mentioned about them before. They'll be in that top half mix as well. Liam Manning has taken charge. They've lost Borja Sainz this summer. Josh Sargent has been heavily linked with a move away as well, but at the time of recording, that hasn't quite happened yet. So he's still around, which could be a really big boost if he does decide to stick around for the course of the campaign. I think they'll just fall short. I think they'll be I think there'll be a little bit of a different outfit. Last season, they were sort of very, very entertaining to watch, but a little bit up and down. I think they'll be much more controlled, much more organised under Liam Manning. But I think they'll maybe just lack a little bit of the quality to get into those playoff places. Who else have we got here? So we've got Middlesbrough, Millwall, and Sheffield United. We've got one spot left in the playoffs, and ultimately the top half. So I'm going to go with Millwall first of all. They're going to go into the top half section. They're doing a really good job at the Den. You've got to be really impressed with the way that they're doing their transfer business. They are growing year on year. Alex Neil's doing a cracking job. They signed Josh Coburn from Middlesbrough this summer. So they are, it's the old, cheeky jibe of them being Middlesbrough's B team, who actually did better than Middlesbrough's A team last season. So perhaps people should be a little bit more mindful of not being quite so disrespectful, but I don't think they'll get into the top six. I think they'll be very, very close, and potentially they could be a side who might. Well, to be fair, they might be a side who get into the top six. They were a side that I'm a little bit torn on, really, but I think they might just fall short in getting into the top six. So that means that we've got two sides left here: Middlesbrough, Sheffield United, for who's going to get into the playoffs and who's going to finish in the top half. Let's start with Sheffield United, because I'm going to put Sheffield United in the playoff places. Ultimately they fell just short last season. They got all the way to the playoff final and were beaten by Sunderland. Chris Wilder got sacked, which I know that a lot of Middlesbrough fans will be quietly smirking to themselves about. But I do think that Sheffield United will be there again this season. I think they'll be in that mix for the playoffs. I don't think they'll be quite as strong as they were last season. I don't think they'll be finishing third in the table necessarily, but I do think they've got enough strength and enough quality to be in there. Ruben Sellers is a really good coach and someone who I expect to do well with Sheffield United. I do think they'll get into the top six. I'm not quite sure whether they'll get promoted, but I do think that they'll be in there. And ultimately that, last but not least, leaves Middlesbrough, who I think will ultimately finish the season in this top half of the table category. I think at the time of recording, I think you could probably even say that Middlesbrough are looking like a bottom half side with the business that's been done. At the time of recording, it's only been Alfie Jones and Abdoulaye Kante who've signed. Callum Britton is due to arrive very, very shortly, but at the moment, I don't think those deals are enough to really move us forward. I'd probably even suggest that Middlesbrough are actually weaker going into the season that we were at the end of last season. Ultimately, Middlesbrough finished 10th in the Championship last term. And so I think that it's going to be it could be another tricky season for Middlesbrough this season. A lot of it will depend on what happens between now and the end of the summer transfer window. There's some big plans, but it could all depend on outgoings. If Middlesbrough lose Hayden Hackney and we lose Rav van den Berg, it means that we could have money to spend, which is good because it means we might be able to go out and strengthen and bring in some quality players, and things might look a little bit different. But at the same time, Hayden Hackney is a hugely important player, arguably the most important player at Middlesbrough at the moment. So losing him will be a really difficult one. I think trying to replace him will be very, very hard. I think Rav van den Berg, he wasn't great last season under Michael Carrick, but I don't think any of Middlesbrough's defenders were. So if we lost him, I think, again, that's another player who would need replacing. And I just think that there's a little bit too much work still to do with Middlesbrough. I was kind of hoping that some of this transfer business would be done already, but at the moment, it doesn't seem like it's likely. And so I think for that reason, I think that's why I can't see Middlesbrough getting into the top six at the moment. I'm not going to put a prediction on it in terms of a specific place, but I do think they'll be in that cluster of teams in the top half of the table, somewhere between 7th and 12th. Whether they're genuinely challenging for the top six, I'm not too sure. Whether there might be a side who get into finish in 12th place and still have a little bit of daylight between them and the top six, I'm not entirely sure. But at the time of recording, I do think that I'm not quite convinced by Middlesbrough this season. I think there's a lot of competition in the Championship from what you can see there. I'm just not sure that we're good enough compared to those teams to get into the top six. So I want to know what you think. I want to know whether you think that Middlesbrough will get into the top six or where you think Middlesbrough will finish this season. Drop into the comments below. Let me know what you think, and let me know what you think of my predictions, and whether you think the Rob Edwards side will surprise people this season. Drop in below, and if you have enjoyed this video, hit like, hit subscribe, because there's going to be plenty more content coming up very, very soon. Catch you later.